Well, this is something I've wanted to talk about for a while. I used to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm obviously not any longer. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness my entire life, and it was very difficult being raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. For one thing, they advocate not to socialize outside of the organization, which in my case meant I had virtually no socialization. Um, I had no friends, or at least none that were my age. When I was a kid, my best friend was a middle aged man, and my second best friend was an old man. And I'm not faulting either of them. They were both really good guys. They were good to me, but but getting it's not the same as getting to go out and actively play and engage in age appropriate activities, um, as opposed to just going in the field service. It's not the same. It doesn't make up for that. Another thing is I was homeschooled, and so that kind of added another dynamic where I never got to even get outside and away. I was always in the organization's grasp. Um, and that wasn't fun. And you could say, oh, well, maybe I avoided ridicule, and I'm sure I did to some extent, but that still, I don't believe, makes up for the lack of socialization that I didn't receive. It it was not fun. Between that and going to school, on top of all those things, I was in a single parent family. So it was just my mom and my two other siblings, a brother and a sister, and we were going to the meetings. And that was not fun. One thing about the witnesses is they keep trying to advocate themselves as this loving organization who takes care of everyone, and they'll take care of the fatherless boys, fatherless children. And that's not true at all. That's not true at all. They are very cliquey, and if you don't have a father who is also an elder or ranking within the organization. Even having just a father in and of itself puts you on a higher pedestal than someone in my situation. And so it also created the scenario where uh, growing up, I never got the opportunity to socialize. And it wasn't even for lack of trying, because when I was a kid, my mom tried to have parties and have people over, have even trying to extend to kids who we met at assemblies, who were somewhat local, trying to get things together, and nothing ever panned out. And a lot of it was because we were a single parent family, and they isolated us, stayed away from us. It was yeah, they're not loving at all. Um, it was not fun going through that. I wouldn't go through it. I wouldn't live that again for anything. And it's continuing to have detrimental effects on me. Even becoming an adult, when I finally got the chance to leave the organization, I was fat and very overweight, obese, and my hair was thinning. I was losing my hair. And so, imagine that becoming a young man and you're not socialized. And then these negative things are stacking up against you. it's not a fun scenario to be in. Not and you don't know who you are, you don't know what to do. It's absolutely horrible. Um, yeah. One thing I would say, there maybe you could say I avoided certain things. I just don't think that it was worth it because the organization has this culture. It's a tyrannical culture of crippling. They advocate for crippling the children socially so that they'll be dependent on the organization when they grow up. Because when you look at the organization, they don't have inflows coming in from the world, as we used to say. They don't have inflows of people coming in from the world and getting baptized. The majority of people who are sustaining the numbers within the organization are people who were born into it. And so they're trying to maintain that. It's very obvious. They're trying to maintain that and trying to cripple the youth within the organization socially so that they're beholden to the organization and they won't leave because they can't leave. I think about some of the other people I knew within the organization. If they leave, they lose their entire family and maybe their jobs and livelihood. They'll be out on the street, well, potentially, but best case scenario, they could get an entry level job making barely any money, barely enough to support themselves. And that's no kind of life. The organization openly advocates against college. They openly advocate, you know, against pursuing worldly things, as they say, worldly pleasures, because the end's right around the corner, right? And it's not going to matter anyway. So don't go out and get a job where you could support a family, where you can maybe squeak out a little bit of happiness in your life. No, get a minimum wage job that allows you to pioneer. That way, you're storing up treasures in heaven. You can go out and give. I got some. Go out and give pamphlets like this. I found that when I was going through some old stuff. I found some other magazines too. I'm not going to go over them. Will humans ruin this earth? Oh, yeah, that's really great. That kind of reminds me of what the elites of the world keep talking about, doesn't it? Oh, humans are a parasite on the earth. They're ruining the earth. So, what's the solution? Get rid of humans. Now, granted, the witnesses aren't openly advocating for getting rid of humans. However, they believe that God's going to come in and destroy all the worldly people and leave the witnesses or the other sheep on the earth. And so basically advocating for the death of billions of people. So here's some other books I have. There's an old songbook of mine. Is the what we used to use when I was a kid. Then we went to these paperback ones. I think this one was my first Bible. Not completely sure if it was or not, but it has a lot of the writing from when I was a kid in it, so I'm assuming it was mine, my first one. And then I also had this. This is just a variation of the Green Bible. I'm not sure if this was done by the Watchtower, by if the binding was put on by Bethel, or if it was custom. Either way, it's very unique. It's very interesting. I never have seen another one like it. So, yeah, so there's some of the old books, literature, the spiritual food, right? Yeah, it wasn't fun growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Uh, so I wasn't allowed to socialize with other people. I also wasn't allowed to play certain video games or watch certain movies. And, you could make an argument for that because obviously what they do allow kids to do today is beginning, at least from what I can see, is out of control. And it is destroying a lot of the value systems. But at any rate, the reason I bring that up is because a lot of the video games, even some of the movies that were popular when I was a kid, uh, what's in what's interesting is at one point we were taking it so far because we were trying to do the right thing and go by the rules and everything. We were taking it so far where I couldn't watch shows like SpongeBob, and I remember getting in trouble for watching Johnny Bravo when I was a kid. So it's just is taken a little bit too far. Some of the video games, what's so funny is the movies and the video games. Uh, we didn't watch them, like Spider-Man or Batman, or even when the Star Wars came out, so Episode 3, I think. We weren't allowed to watch that either. I didn't watch that till I don't tell, I was an adult. So weren't allowed to watch that, and then I found out later that other kids were watching them, and it's just like really kids who were the children of elders were watching these things and playing violent video games. By the way, yeah, didn't find that out till later, and it's like really we're trying to play by the book, do everything right, and they're getting away with all this stuff. Oh, but I guess it's okay because their father's an elder and their mother's a pioneer. I wasn't even allowed to wear when I was young. Me and my brother had hopes that maybe someday we'd be able to play football. And granted, uh, I think about that from time to time, and overall, I'm glad that we didn't because I've seen too many injuries from people who played football at a young age and got injured, and they're injured for life. Back injuries, especially, different concussions, different things with your neck. It's just there's too much. I believe there's too much risk in it. What's funny is uh, Joe Namath said it best when he said, the human body wasn't meant to play football. So, in some senses, yeah, I'm glad I didn't play. However, at the time, me and my brother wanted to play. We practiced a lot. We both actually got fairly good at it, especially for never getting to play on a team. And I remember we wanted to wear sports stuff. We were getting in. We wanted to wear the Pittsburgh Steelers stuff, and I remember getting in trouble for that, for wanting to do that. And what's so funny is, so I wasn't allowed to do that. Of course, my mom let me keep what I already had. I just wasn't supposed to get any more stuff. But I wasn't allowed to do that because Gladiator, the organization used to put out stuff saying, oh, it's similar to gladiators and things of that nature, and very advocating for violence and hero worship. They use that idol worship, um, and yet we found out later that elders in our own congregation had sports jerseys. Like all I had was stuff that said Pittsburgh Steelers on it. I don't think I ever had anything that had like names. I may have gotten something um, at one point, but never those expensive jerseys that they sell there, like the real thing. And then they had the expensive jerseys, and they were having football parties with all black and gold and everything. And I remember even being a little kid. Of course, this was when I was starting to get into football, and this was, I believe, before I got in trouble for having Steeler stuff. But anyway, um, I asked to go to some. I heard someone in. We were out in service, and this one elder invited someone else in the car group to a football party. I was right there, and I'm still young enough to get away with something like this. He didn't invite me, and so I asked if I could go, and he said something like, "Only if you're not rooting for the Browns." And oh yeah, I do remember. So this is when I first started to kind of understand football. So I wasn't really didn't fully understand it. I don't even know if I had any Steeler gear at this point. But that one offensive thing to say. And I didn't go to the party, but you know, why would you invite someone else in front of another person and then say something like that to a kid? Oh yeah, real loving there. So yeah, that's one of the experiences. Um, Lots of fun experiences. Like I remember going out for evening service work, and yeah, more people are going to be home, and trying to auxiliary pioneer because I was homeschooled and walking up to the Kingdom Hall. We didn't live too far from it. In fact, where our house was, you could see the Kingdom Hall in the distance. So um, it was within walking distance, but still, it's the idea. Walking to the Kingdom Hall to go out in service, and the elders who were going to go sometimes wouldn't even be there, and it's like you couldn't give me a call to let me know that you weren't going to be there. It's just I hate them, and then they encapsulate you in fear. Before I start talking about that, though, one thing I will say about football is they always try to say, "Oh, it's so terrible." One thing that's terrible about it is the competitiveness, and it's like, is it really that competitive? I mean, think about it. It's a cooperative sport. People don't show up to a football game with a baseball bat. People don't. Well, generally, as a rule, you don't see boxing fights breaking out on the field of a football game. They're playing an orderly game that the rules are clearly defined. That if you play in a certain manner and you happen to be better as a team, then ultimately you'll win. So yes, it is competitive to a degree, but it's a type of cooperative competitiveness, not a blatant, brutal competitiveness that leads to one side being entirely decimated and destroyed. So, in my opinion, they're trying to um, just control people even more by saying, "Oh, don't watch this or that because we don't like it," is ultimately what it is. We don't like it, so you can't watch it. We, the governing body. So, yeah. And of course, what's interesting. So after the sports stuff, I kind of got into sports a little bit, um, and then it kind of just after I was like too old to have the opportunity to potentially play, I kind of lost all interest. So now I don't even watch sports, and it doesn't mean anything to me. But I still like to go out and play around a little bit when I can. But yeah, playing is still fun. But watching to me isn't very fun. But it's almost ironic. It's watching sports. It became interesting for a little bit, and now I'm back to the feeling I got when I was a little kid seeing a sports game. It really does nothing to me or for me. It's there. It's okay. They're kind of doing the same thing. It's kind of boring. So I don't know. I think that's funny. But yeah, going. Can't remember what I was trying to thinking of talking about next. But different things like the fairness. Um, Oh, I'll tell you something interesting is so I recently found out that now they allow beards. Oh, well, isn't that nice? So now you can have a beard and be one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I believe they still let you have your privileges. Oh, isn't that great? I have a scar on my face because, I didn't have a dad, so I had no one to teach me or tell my mom, use certain razors. So we used real cheap razors. And I have a scar from shaving because my facial hair has always grown really, actually kind of fast. It's been very annoying. And I tried to not shave too much because I often would cut myself and it was very annoying. I still get razor burn fairly easily, even though I use better razors. But anyway, and so I hated shaving, having to shave all the time, and we had to do it all the time because you had to go to the meetings and then you had to go out in service, and you maybe had one day where you didn't have to shave. But anyway, I got cut several times. I know it was annoying for my brother too. I think he probably cut himself up too. I don't know if he cut himself as bad as me, but and then we got a couple of times when we forgot to shave. We got talked to, and it's like, really, you know, you can't just let us go. Most we would have had a little bit of stubble from the day before. It wouldn't have even been that bad, but they were just always, right on us. That's one reason I let my hair grow. You know, I'll I let my hair grow long because I was never allowed to have short hair or have long hair. It always had to be shorter. And so, yeah, I let my hair grow when we quit going to the meetings. It was starting to grow longer when we were still in it because one of the reasons we left, in fact, the main linchpin reason we left, was because of the Australian Royal Commission. And they're not turning over information to the authorities. And so that was just a huge eye opening event that really put on display even the governing body's conviction, because you had Jeffrey Jackson get up there and say that it would be presumptuous of them to assume that they're God's chosen organization. And yet, this is the same man who I remember at a district convention telling kids that if they're asked if they're one of Jehovah's Witnesses, to say, "That's right, and you got a problem about that?" Oh, So you want kids to take a stand for your organization, but you won't even take a stand when you're supposedly one of the governing body. Aren't you the one who's supposed to be the spearhead taking the stand and preaching before the nations? They're just such hypocrites. Oh no, wait, that's right. I forgot. Jesus said that we're going to leave the preaching work to the children, and that's how we get into heaven. I mean, geez, they're just a joke. Luckily, when I did get out, I got to go visit Charles Taze Russell grave while they still had the pyramid there. So I got to see that in person, and it was a huge pyramid. It was taller than me, and overlooks a Masonic lodge, which they've since taken out. Gee, I wonder why. Yeah. But yeah, being one of Jehovah's Witnesses has had other detrimental effects on me growing up. Um, One of the things, on top of not having friends, because, well, and it wasn't for lack of trying, even on my part. I remember going around to different halls and trying to organize, and my brother did too. Tried to organize, like, getting kids together to play football or other things, and it never panned out. Nothing ever worked. No one ever agreed to do anything really. Um, it was so irritating because I remember we did go to a football game. It was like not that competitive. I think it was flag football, that one of the elders put together. And so, he was able to get people to go, but if me and my brother tried to get a group to go, it didn't work. But anyway, so there was that, and then another thing that was really irritating is, not getting to even have the opportunity to find a girlfriend and, anything romantic like that, because, well, there were no opportunities in my congregation. Um, Anyone who knows me could potentially or say there was one, but no, there wasn't. Just completely terrible person. But anyway, there was no opportunity at all. And then when, you see people, or in my case, when you see girls from other congregations at, for example, an assembly or a convention, how do you talk to them? I would try to get jobs working in their vicinity, but nothing ever panned out. And then uh, at the time, I didn't even have a cell phone. I was, oh, being a single parent, being raised very strictly. Obviously, I didn't have a cell phone, so that didn't help things either. So there was no even any way to communicate. So you have all those, and then there's the thing where you can't really talk to them without everyone knowing. So, in fact, what's funny is I remember when I started becoming interested in girls, I remember my cousin, who's older than me, got in trouble who's also a witness, and I believe he's still got in trouble for seeing a girl. I can't remember if he took her on a date or if he was just texting her. It was something ridiculously stupid, though. And one thing I do remember is that nothing happened, but he lost all his privileges, and he was probably just texting. but he lost all his privileges because of it. So I don't, yeah, it was funny. I don't even think he was put on, I don't remember if he was put on reproof or not. I don't think he was, but I know he lost his privileges. So, it just goes to show how strict they are and overbearing. So, and then that has carried through, at least in my life, where those struggles kind of continue because you know not being socialized. So I have no friend group, no peer group. Can't really you can't really break into one once you're a little bit older. However, I guess it's a little different. So I am attending school now, and so trying to make changes there and trying to cut out a better life for myself. Attending school, and I am making friends, but it's just it feels more difficult. I guess it's always going to feel like I'm behind because I didn't get a childhood and I didn't get to go through those milestones growing up. I mean, didn't get holidays, didn't get Christmas. This is one thing I wanted to make this video during Christmas time because at least to me, uh, Christmas is still kind of this new odd thing to me because we were always told it's of its pagan origins and how horrible it is, but so it's still like this abstract thing that I now get to experience a little bit of, um, and in some senses, to me, it symbolizes a bit of rebellion just as much as this flag symbolizes. That's another thing I would get in trouble for having anything patriotic. Can't be patriotic. Uh, can't be glad that you live in the country you do and try to support it so that you can essentially sustain your life by trying to support the sustaining of the culture that protects you. But anyway, so yeah, I get to celebrate Christmas, although to be honest, it's a little bit sad for me because seeing Christmas and seeing Christmas uh, movies and hearing songs and stuff like that, it in some senses it's a reminder of what I missed out on, and so it has this like strong tinge of bitterness to it. But yeah, it's all the holidays really kind of do in the sense, even though there's kind of this they're new to me still, but there there's always going to be that, I think. And I'll probably make other videos talking about it. I just wanted, this is kind of like something I wanted to make more or less to I don't know, start talking about this, kind of get it off my chest because, you know, this being a Jehovah's Witness, one of Jehovah's Witnesses was, my entire life growing up. That was my entire life. That was it. And so it's just something that has engulfed so much of my life, so much of my time that it kind of helps to try, at least attempt to try to deconstruct that a little bit, and talk about how I'm trying to turn my life around. So one thing, like I had said earlier, is I was very overweight. I was obese when we left the organization. And one thing I started to do, of course, when we initially started to leave, so I don't really count this little bit of time when we just quit going. My grandfather was still alive, and he he lived for a while. He died in 21, and that's when we really broke away from everything and were able to actually leave the organization, and just not have any contact with any of them after that. Uh, at least no real direct contact. So that was, I mean, I miss him, but that was in a sense good for me, and I believe good for you know my mom, my brother, and sister also, because it gave us that we needed to get away from the organization. We just couldn't, um, as long as my grandfather was alive, and he was a good man. It's but he was in the organization since the 1960s or 50s. He was an elder since the 60s at least, and pioneer as long as I can remember. He was pioneering, I believe, since before I was even born. So, very, very into the organization. And at any rate, when we finally got away from there, what I started to do was I started going to the gym and started to gradually change my diet and what I ate, and that started to help get the weight off. And then took some other steps, and eventually it's led me to where I'm at now, where I am finally at least somewhat of a healthy weight and at least presentable. Um, I still feel, I guess I'm always going to feel like I need to improve my body, because a lot of times there's just, I guess it's from being overweight. A lot of times you look in the mirror and it's just like there's just so much you're unhappy with, um, and you kind of get obsessed with trying to control it, but trying to get it under control. And to some extent you can, but it's difficult. But so I did that, took other steps, and now I'm back in school. So there is that, trying to carve out a better life, but it's difficult. It's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle, and I wouldn't say it's been fun. The alternative the alternative bears no fruit, but doesn't make this fun. But that's just where I'm at now. What I have to continue doing to try to hopefully attain happiness or something resembling it. But yeah, so that's just a very, very brief overview, I guess, of just some of my experiences growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I might make other videos in the future if I feel like it. But, we'll see. Anyway, if if you watch this entire thing, well, Thank you, and sorry if you feel like it's a waste of time. It's just it's something. It's hard getting away from something like this that's had its talons in you for such a long time. So anyway, that's my experience, and at least some of it. Thanks for watching.